All right, welcome everybody to the third book group of the Evo-Devo universe research community. We have the distinct pleasure of having Bob Doyle, information philosopher, taking us through this amazing book by Paul Davies, The Demon and the Machine, about information webs in living systems and in the universe.
Right.
Fantastic book. And Jim just joined us, so we're going to have a good conversation now that we got Jim on board.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Jim.
Yeah. So Jim, Domino, Julian, Charles. Yep. Well, okay. Bob, you want to take it away and you tell us how you're going to want to approach the book and how you want us to jump in.
And mostly this is about talking, but I would say that what I do, as I was explaining earlier to Dami there, that I have produced all this information, and I love the fact that Paul Davies is telling us about information. And it turns out his work and my work go back to the 1960s. And I want to get onto that later, but right now we're going to focus on the book. And I hope those of you who've read the book and have interest about one of the chapters or one of the issues, we could discuss them as we spend the first half of our talk today, just looking at the chapters of his book, okay? So, as I say here, in The Demon and the Machine, he asks, he doubles down on information as fundamental to understanding life. He calls information the missing link that's going to allow us to understand life. He's going to build on that a great deal. But now let's look at one chapter at a time, and I guess what I have to do is get this screen over here and move in this page. One moment. Good. So the first chapter is what is life itself? And you all recognize, and Dummy pointed that out, you looked at Schrodinger, who wrote the book What is Life in 1944. It's about 8 years before DNA will discover the so-called aperiodic molecule that Schrodinger suggested might be the key to the data structure of life. So it's a very great book. Now I'm quoting a few things from Davies himself. Living organisms have goals and purposes. My talk today at the end is we're going to come back to purpose and we're going to come back to meaning in a big time. And Davies says the product of billions of years, about 3 billion years since life started, whereas atoms and molecules, he says, just blindly follow physical laws. So the physical laws of the prebody universe, the first 9 billion years, did not have any purpose unless we find a way to add one. And I must say, Paul Davies really wishes he could add one. He's hoping that information itself might be able to be the foundation for purpose and meaning in the universe. He then says, and this is really great, patterns of information flow can literally take on a life of their own, surging through cells, swirling around brains and networking across ecosystems and societies, displaying their own systematic dynamics. It's from this rich and complex ferment of information that the concept of agency emerges with its links to consciousness, free will, and other vexing puzzles. I'm very much loving to see that. My first book was on the problem of free will, and the problem that I proposed, the solution I proposed, has been taken up by a dozen more people since I mentioned it, and I found at least a dozen before I thought of it. So this was not it was my own idea, but it wasn't unique. Julian, you're smiling. You see that sort of thing happens a lot, right? Anyway, there are over 24 people, including Dan Dennett, some of the leading people in the free will area. So Davies says it's here in the way living systems arrange information into organized patterns that this distinctive order of life emerges from the chaos of the molecular realm. So here we are talking about the emergence of order from chaos, and that's going to be a very large part of my discussion because Paul Davies thinks he knows where it came from, and my mentor at Harvard, David Laser, wrote a book on how order can come out of chaos, that the universe can begin with maximum entropy and disorder. And yet here we are today having this conversation. So Paul Davies and my mentor, David Laser, both worked on this problem in the 1970s. So scientists are just beginning to understand the power of information as a cause, and I agree with that. That's the whole issue, whether the mind, being immaterial, can possibly affect the physical world. How can an immaterial thought affect the physical world? And of course, we're showing ourselves right now. I'm thinking and you're thinking, and I'm causing you to think, and so forth. And now he concludes, the thing that separates life from non-life is information. And the essence of biological reproduction then is the replication of heritable information. So any conversation on that? John was suggesting he'll be the moderator, and if someone puts up a hand and wants to talk about this chapter 1, otherwise we can say we've got chapter 1 and move on to 2.
Yeah, we were going to do questions by chapter, guys, and discussion. So is there anything in that opening you guys want to jump into, or do you want to jump into 2 with a demon? Julian?
You're right, John. I'm going to have lots to say. So can you guys hear me? Let me just say I didn't finish the whole book. I got all the way up to the chapter on quantum, but I didn't get through chapter 1. And I started out really liking the book but I just found myself getting more and more annoyed as I went.
It's a wonderful book, Jim. And he's a wonderful writer. You know, I have almost 20 of his books. So.
What were you annoyed about?
The central thing that annoys me is that he's presenting this idea that information is what separates life from non-life, as though it's this big revelation. And that was one thing, and a lot of us have been thinking along those lines for decades, and there's a lot of literature out there, you know, and I've promoted some of the literature, and we've had some of the folks who are involved in that literature in our group that he doesn't really even talk about. So I was annoyed at that it's this big revelation. He didn't really define information, and that's something a lot of people have spent a lot of time. You know, it's not a trivial thing necessarily.
No.
And then the third thing, which we haven't gotten to yet, so I'll leave off, but his biology, you know, some of the things he was saying, you know, just to a biologist were rather superficial and in some ways possibly even misleading. So I'll just leave it at that. We can get to that when we come to it.
Yeah, anyone else want to jump in on that theme, like things that they didn't like about the book before we go further?
I'd be happy to say something that I do like, but think could be enriched by some of the cosmological natural selection stuff that I'm obsessed with, obviously. Yeah. I think he's right that information it has causal power. I was talking about this with my son today. He was asking, is Santa Claus real? And I was saying, well, there's this idea called Santa Claus, and it moves presents all around the world into kids' bedrooms at night, one day of the year. So
that's good.
Something real happening there, but it's kind of an idea. The idea is very powerful, and it changes things all around the world. So, you know, but the
best book I know that I read on that was called Cultures and Organizations. Subtitle. Look at this awesome subtitle: Software of the Mind.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Like culture as software of the mind with causal power, right?
Causal power, yeah. Kevin Mitchell's book is good on that as well. Do you know Kevin Mitchell wrote a book recently about the causal power of information? But
no.
So it's a rich tradition that's still very alive.
Can you throw it in the chat so that we can give all the people who don't show up? Yeah, because I'd love to read. I'd love to know about it. And
I got it somewhere. I won't try and find it now, but
just to Jim's point, in slight defense of Davies, Jim. I felt the promotional aspect of it too, but it feels like somebody's got to keep banging that drum because there's not enough money being spent on that concept. So I was giving him credit for that. It's like, come on. Like, keep mentioning how little money there is in information science network. He mentioned network information science, which I think is so key, right? Like relational aspects of all of this. Both.
Absolutely. That's why I liked it. That's why I liked it jumping in. It's just that as I said, I became more and more annoyed because, you know, and admittedly, the field of biology is still really stuck in reductionism, and that's something I've been criticizing for
Forever.
a long time now. So it needs to be pounded. But
okay, so the book that Julian just mentioned is called Free Agents by Kevin Mitchell, by the way, for those who didn't see it. So
Yep, I have that book, and sometime we
good.
can talk about it some more. Yeah.
good, thanks.
Meantime, let's try to make our way through.
Let's make our way through, yeah.
I'm watching the time because
Great.
I hope about the first half we'll do the book, and then the last half I'm going to explain how Davies fits into my work and meaning and purpose, right? That's my big discussion. So chapter 2 is called Enter the Demon. And the demon that starred in this chapter is Maxwell's demon. So I have a web page on Maxwell and his demon. And I just, Ludwig Boltzmann is also important because entropy is sort of the converse of information. And here he writes, Paul Davies says, information makes a difference in the world. We might say it has causal power. That's his theme. The challenge to science is to figure out how to couple abstract information to the concrete world of physical objects. And I think, Julian, you were just saying, well, because when we think up ideas and work on them and go out and take them into the world, we're affecting the world. So you could say, oh, that's obvious. Did he just discover this idea? Anyway, I want to, no more comments here unless you have them on Maxwell's demon.
I have a comment. Apologies because I didn't actually read the book, but I guess it seems to me that everything is built out of information, and information is in everything. So it's strange to me that he says, I guess he must say something very much more specific than just information is what separates life from non-life, because there's so many non-living things that have information, my smartphone, everything.
Yeah. Let me respond to that, Dominic, because that's one of the key ideas. I believe I call myself the information philosopher for a reason. I've been studying information and how it can be embedded in a concrete object, because information is nothing unless it is embodied in our physical mind. It is not communicable unless it has energy that can move it. Free energy can move information from me talking to you hearing. So there's a big connection between information in the physical world and information in living systems. And the thing Davies is saying is that in the abiotic world, there is information and we can measure it. We can see the sun, and the sun sends us a lot of energy and so forth. And that means we can see information in the physical world. But whereas you and I can communicate information, there's no information being transmitted from me to the sun. There's a lot of information in the form of physical energy, free energy, negative entropy coming from the sun to me, but there's nothing going the other way because the physical world has no agents. There's no purpose there, according to Davies, and I think I agree. Is there meaning there? Yes, there is meaning because I can see what the sun means to me. I can measure the sun as a physicist or astrophysicist. I can exactly find out how it's working. So we can see information in the world, but the world, abiotic world, the non-living world by itself doesn't have any communication between agents. All the things in the physical world are passive. They are not acting. They are acted upon by the reductionist physical forces that Jim mentions. The reductionism applies pretty well to the physical world. It doesn't apply to the biological world.
Yeah. So what, we had that conversation last time, Bob, which was the idea that if you include the environment that the non-living system is embedded in, then you do see these features that look like it's an information encoding. There's a survival encoding, like a Bernard cell has that survival encoding, right? The dissipative structures. So the entity itself is not learning, you could say, but then if you look at it embedded and enacted in the environment, there are these, interesting persistent features that you could argue are learning from the beginning of the universe, right? Like the beginning of the universe, those features didn't exist. You reach a certain level of complexity, then certain features are learned, if I can use that word, right?
Yeah,
To
I
create
got, okay.
create the stability. And so I guess where I would agree with you is that the ceiling of the learning that can happen in those systems is so much lower because there's no heritable information being passed.
That's one thing, no heritable information, John. I agree with that completely. And the information is accumulating. The universe is evolving. So we use the term evolution of a star, evolution of a galaxy quite correctly. It's getting more complex, absolutely. And that complexity is a key description of what's going on. But there's nothing there in the nature of one of these physical objects acting in the world. They are only being passive objects acted upon by physical forces. Jim, you putting your hand up there?
Yeah, I think
Julia.
to address Dami's question, I think, it's really pertinent to this chapter because Maxwell's demon is really kind of how he never defines information, and that's the problem I think Dami is getting at. But Maxwell's demon kind of gets at it, which is that information is something that's countering the second law as much as physically possible.
Mm-hmm.
And actually,
Exactly.
Jacques Monod in Chance and Necessity invoked Maxwell's demon as well. And he said that enzymes are basically Maxwell's demons because they're forcing something to go in a way that, and so basically I think for this chapter, what he gets at is, no, you're not violating the second law, but you're getting as close as possible to doing that with the biological information. And it's not just the information per se, but it's the information being used and directed toward a specific end. And I guess that's what you're getting at with agency.
Yeah, exactly. You can program a nanobot or something to behave like a Maxwell's demon. It doesn't have to be conscious or living, but it can still move information around. And it can still
it's true.
have causal powers on that information.
Right.
Yeah. The only thing I would like to say about this chapter was, well, first I want to say that Werner Lowenstein is the one he quotes all the time as the biochemist who talks about cellular organelles, many cellular organelles being pushed to the efficiency limit for the little demon activities, like the proton pump, as he gives as an example, right? Like and the photosynthesis, like 90% efficiency, right? So certain things just get pushed to maximum demon efficiency. And I thought that was brilliant the way you just said it, Jim. That's exactly how I got it. So information is countering entropy as much as possible. But then I don't know if you guys saw this, but in this chapter was where he mentioned Andreas Wagner's book, Arrival of the Fittest, which I feel is possibly our book for our next book, possibly. If we want to continue on that, I mean, I've got this long list. I'll bring it up, right? I'll put it in the chat of all the lists of books we've stuck in. So maybe we can decide at the end what we want. But what Wagner talks about is the learning that happens in these complex systems. And if you remember, he said even a bacterium is a whiz at mathematics, it seems, right? In chapter 2 on the bottom of page 65, he's quoting Wagner exactly there.
Exactly.
Encoded modeling, that's the causal power. And that's what Wagner says in Arrival of the Fittest is like, there's never enough time to create life from first principles, random variation. You have to include this learning component, not just the information, but the encoded learning. And I thought that was very cool, and I didn't see Davies ever get to that. He quotes this guy, but he never quite gets to that.
I would second the Wagner book. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm going to put it on my purchase list right now, John.
Okay. Yeah. I have it. I have it on my shelf, and It came right out of that chapter. I thought that was an amazing chapter. That was the most thing I got out of that chapter. I don't know if anyone else wants to say any more about chapter 2, but that was page 65 where he describes like what do we have to do to get beyond Shannon's information, right? The definition, the communication definition, and he just gives these 2 examples. You know, genetic information is contextual, and organisms are prediction machines, right? Right there is, you know, Friston's prediction machine stuff. So,
Right.
Yeah. Anything
All
more?
right,
I want
then.
to jump into your next.
I
Let's
just
go
want
on
to
to
add
yeah.
that my definition of entropy has always been lack of information. So I think it kind of tautologically follows from that information would be countering the second law in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is definitely the opposite of of entropy, but it cannot violate the second law. And I'll be glad
Right,
to go
it
into
doesn't-
that later.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of confusion, this dissipative structures thing that John just mentioned, it always bothers me. Many people think, oh, life, it just needs to be far from equilibrium and a dissipative structure, as we learn from, it's amazing, I'm not cognitive problem here, the order out of chaos guy, Ilya Prigogine. So Prigogine basically taught us to talk in terms of dissipative structures, but the losing of information that's involved in a dissipating of information is not the focus. That's some people like to say, oh, entropy is the source of life. Many people tend to go over and think entropy is doing something good. To me, it isn't. To me, entropy is what is called The Devil Incarnate by Norbert Wiener. There's nothing more evil in the universe than entropy. And on the other hand, negative entropy and information maybe is synonymous with goodness in some way, because if we don't have an information structure, we don't have anything useful. Anyway, let's go to Logic of Life. There's a story there, again, about the role of computers in life and computers in the mind, which is the whole cognitive neuroscience. And John, I'm very pleased to learn about your neuroscience organization. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. But in the 3rd chapter, basically, we have the quote from Paul Davies, biological information is the software of life. You just mentioned that earlier, which suggests that life's astonishing capabilities can be traced right back to the foundation of logic and computation. I cannot go that far. I think logic and computation are human inventions, and they don't help us to understand anything in the universe except because we can use computers to model everything in the world, to create mathematical versions of it. As Georgie's group that I visited in Siena a few weeks ago, they're doing computer science, complexity science models. Complexity turned into a tool to model ants roaming along pheromone trails, to model penguins huddling in the Antarctic. And they're marvelous. They're wonderful pictures. They're like making a movie of something happening, though, to me, because a model, logic and computation used to create 3D models is just something that looks and acts like, as we look at it, the real world of life. But it is nothing part of that world of life. Living things do not internally contain computers. Anyway, I recommend you read my page on John Conway and often also Stephen Wolfram, who claims his cellular automata, and they're of course based completely on John Conway, can explain all of quantum physics, general relativity, and the origin of life. And Wolfram is really a very powerful person, a very wealthy person, made these great tools called Mathematica and had the Alpha knowledge system that he's selling these days. But wanted to say also, the Veritasium people, you had a recommendation to watch their little video on entropy recently. They have, you were talking about networks, John, and Veritasium has an extraordinarily good 2 videos on 6 degrees of separation. You've seen them, I hope?
No, I haven't seen them yet, but yeah, I know the one with the big 6 on it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, the Stephen Strogatz, Derek Muller's partner in Veritasium, is one of the two people. Duncan Watts, I think, was his partner in developing what are called small worlds models of networking, and how do networks really work so efficiently so that we can go from you to anyone in the world with 6 steps of some kind. And there's more there than that. The Barabasi book on networks is my reference, and how networks really work is another great subject. So, any more comments on cellular automata and game of life and as a model of life? There's Jim.
You're muted, Jim.
Yeah, sorry about that. You already touched on it, Bob, but this is kind of where I was starting to get annoyed, because this idea that life is basically an algorithm.
Right.
We've had a lot of discussion on the EDU site recently about this, and I feel like it is not. And I felt like Davies was arguing that it is basically an algorithm. And that's where, Robert Rosen had a lot to say about that. And, I think if you know Rosen's work, you could say that life does engage in modeling relations, and living systems, as organisms especially, engage in modeling relations with their environment, but it's not an algorithm because it cannot be reduced to syntax.
Yeah.
In other words, a set of rules that it just can't be reduced to that, because semantics is just as important. And we don't have to get into that discussion here because it's a long discussion. But I felt like Davies was trying to argue that life is basically like a computer, and I think that's problematic.
I agree. Just a couple of reactions. Rosen, whose teacher was Nicholas Reshevsky, and the bulletin that published the first article on the great work of Walter Pitts, the young Walter Pitts, and Warren McCulloch at MIT, who first suggested that in an article written for Reshevsky's Bulletin on Mathematical Biology, that the brain neurons and their synapses and junctions could be logic gates. And so the brain might be performing logical, propositional logic solutions and so forth. That was the beginning of one of the greatest ideas humanity's ever come up with, that the computing machine is somehow what's going on in our brain. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm thinking about my mind at the moment, that it can be modeled by a computer. And today, our AI around us is doing exactly that. We are trying to build machines that are doing what's going on in our heads. But I totally reject even Davies' possible feeling that it is computations that are going on in here. That to me, computational neuroscience is nothing but a model for what's going on in here, and we may get it to be as perfect as our actual mind and brain, but it's not what's going on in the living system of a human being, all the way back to a bacterium, because my model of mind goes all the way back to a bacterium who's swimming along and finds all of a sudden something toxic in that direction. And what does it do? It stops and it tumbles, and it has nothing to do except stop at some random location and then go off in another direction in the hopes that it'll find less toxic or more food or heat or whatever. So from the beginnings of life in the prokaryote or the archaea are just very simple little organisms which have already a sign of purpose. Their purpose is to find some food, get warm, and reproduce. Okay. Anyway, I agree with you about, there's John, go ahead. And are you now muted, John? I can't hear you.
Muted.
Sorry. So on that chapter, the thing I got the most out of it was page 101, when he was talking about these two Israeli mathematicians, Harush and Barzel, did and they were studying information flow across all these networks. And as soon as I hear the word network, oh, that's great. What did they find, right? And
Yeah.
what they found was this kind of hub flow and peripheral flow, which to me, that's a very nice, very rough approximation for kind of an evolutionary approach that's decentralized, and a developmental approach that's centralized with top-down control. So they found that there was this need for kind of a top-down causality and a bottom-up exploratory causality in all these networks. And that paper is cited on page 229. So I need to get that paper and read it, because I want to see what he says about this idea of top-down versus bottom-up information, what they say about top-down versus bottom-up information flow models, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I wanted to say in relation to the map versus the territory, which you guys were just, one of the things you guys were just discussing, is I find it really interesting that when the map gets good enough, it substitutes for the territory in evolutionary dynamics. So at a certain point, you use the simulation rather than the physical thing that you were.
Yeah.
And that is what he's getting to in on page 101, when he says, it seems to me that if the patterns themselves obey certain rules or laws, then they may be treated as entities in their own right. And I wrote yes right next to that, because that's really the key idea, right? Is that the map, at a certain point, the algorithm has its own intentionality. And so
we can read it. We read it into it. We read it in, and our models are in fact informative for us, and they're part of what we do. But those are like human products turned into a machine that does the work for us, just like our AI today.
I'm going to try and go one step further and say, not only do we read it into it, but I would argue that if that algorithm is embodied in a technological system, then it has consequences. It's going to go, It's going to have those informational learning consequences, even though the map still isn't the territory. It's still a just a model of reality, and yet it has causal power even there, right? And so that to me is a separate issue that's also worth taking into account.
Let me describe that as I've been reading the current AI and what's the move to autonomous AI, like a Tesla car or a robotic humanoid like Optimus. Basically, when an entity exists that we build and it walks around and talks to us and does our work with us, we are right at that point, John, where you've now built something that's non-living at all, but it has obvious intentions, roles, and it'll go to work for us and so forth. So we're about to cross that line that Davies is describing here.
Well said. Yeah, like Charles said, Charles is jumping back in. He was talking about we have, once we have cognition machines, it's a different game, which is what we have now. Domino has wants to jump in.
Yeah, so when you were talking about bacteria, that they're very simple and they just look around for food and have simple rules, I was thinking, well, isn't that exactly what Conway's game of life is these simple little things that move around and reproduce and have their simple rules? Like, is there a fundamental difference there? I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. To me, I don't think anything can be a classical computational process. I feel like there's a difference with quantum computation, but just curious, like what you think the difference is between Conway's game and the bacteria.
Well, the bacteria are living things. They are actors. The Conway's game of life is our modeling of something that looks a lot like little flying saucers going around on the screen, and they bump into one another. But it got even better when Georgie in Siena presented his little models of birds flying or other organisms like the penguins getting in and out of their huddle to get warm. It really looks just like what we do, but it is nothing like what we do because it's purely a mathematical or algorithmic construct. It's not human. It's not a living thing. Okay, we're not making
Yeah.
much progress on time,
No,
John.
I think you did
This is
great.
it's very interesting though.
Pretty classic stuff, though. Yeah, yeah. And I would challenge your nothing like. I would say it's a successive approximation to me.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
All right, so the big chapter in chapter 4 is Evo-Devo. So all I want to say to that, I don't think I'll read what Davies said because time is running out, but I have written a whole section on Evo-Devo to me, and it's in a page called Beyond the Modern Synthesis. There are basically, as I've discovered, I met Evo-Devo through you guys, but then I quite a bit later, learned about even from Dobzhansky and Meyer and those guys who put the modern synthesis together. They right away wondered about questioning it and looking at embryology and looking at development, and it was telling them a lot more than the prospect of creating everything by random errors and having those random errors prove to be survivable. And so that's what this whole chapter is about. And any more comments? You should all know this very well. I cite his comments about James Shapiro and Barbara McClintock, Shapiro's natural genetic engineering. I have a remark. It's at the end of my talk on this. Why don't I throw it in here? Because I have a fear, John, at the moment I'm not going to get to the end of my talk. I just want to point out that what Davies said at one point in the book is that there are 3.2 billion base pairs in human DNA. And I just looked that up and said, boy, that's a hell of a lot. Davies says, that's more information in bits than there is in the Library of Congress books. But I also then learned that of these 3.2 billion DNA base pairs, only 1% is unique to the human genome. That is to say that every cell of every human being or every living thing has mostly DNA that comes along with having developed in the biosphere. The whole history of the biosphere seems to be packed in there. So we've got 30 million DNA pairs that are human and passed to us by other humans who became human a few 100,000 years ago or whatever. But the rest of it, what the heck is that? We used to talk about it as junk. And there are introns and exons and all these other things, but there's a hell of a lot going on in there. And I think James Shapiro and Barbara McClintock's jumping genes, or whatever they call them, transposons, are carrying some stuff along for us. And it's in every one of us. But you talk about learning, John. There is life learning and providing itself all the information accumulated. And I pointed out 3.2 billion DNA pairs. That's one DNA pair new per year since life started developing on Earth.
Yeah, yeah, and then the other feature that he doesn't really go into enough, but Jim talked about it. You know, Jim gave us that paper, the miRNA paper, and how it greatly increases precision of the proteome, and it's like, to me, there's these higher and higher network regulatory regimes that emerge on top of those additional genes that are thrown on. And so it's the network story of how the regulation changes that really is the key story that we're still groping at it, because there's nobody spending money on it and really deeply trying to understand it.
Okay, I hope we'll get there.
Jim, can I just interject? Because this is the last chapter I read, and I felt it was the one that was most matched my field of expertise, which is evolutionary developmental biology. You know, I had mixed feelings. A lot of what he said is right, and it's not that he said anything wrong, but I think he was making a bit of a straw man argument with his, argument against random mutations being something. It's like I just didn't like the way he portrayed it, and then he got into the thing with cancer at the end, which
I didn't
there's a lot
pay much
of work
attention
there, and I think he swept a lot of stuff under the rug to promote his pet theory that he came up with, and
you're right,
and I didn't think it did the field justice. So
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's so much money in it, and there's so little. I think bring his own particular informational pet theories to it is potentially very good, right? Because certain
yeah,
features,
I
certain
think so.
cancers
But,
have been trained with that approach. Certain small numbers of cancers have been trained with that, immunology training approach. So there's some benefit there.
yeah, but he just the way he presented it as a very original line of thought, and I didn't think it was all that original. And that was kind of a through line through a lot of this stuff that just kind of pissed me off. That just he wasn't giving credit where credit was due.
Got it. Anyone else want to throw in on 2.0, or are we moving on to the next chapter?
I'd like to move on because I'm worried about time, but it's
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
I just want to say one thing. I felt that his single sentence describing the fields, Mike Levin's fields of development was beautifully presented. I'm just going to say it here for the YouTube. Electrical pre-patterning appears to guide morphogenesis by somehow storing information about the three-dimensional final form of the animal and enabling distant regions of the embryo to communicate and make decisions about large-scale growth and morphology.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
I looked at that and I thought, consciousness, same thing. It's like regional communication in the brain, creating this forward model from all of the subconscious processes. There's something really cool about this field approach to sharing of information across large assemblages of computing elements in a network. And I thought that was really good.
John, I'd like to reply in just one confirmation of that view, but also there is no computer going on or networking in the sense of computer networking in the brain, but there is a network of neurons, which were the idea that McCulloch and Pitts saw something that could carry information. But my question for you, John, is where is the information represented in the brain in the sense of a computer? Because a computer stores its information in data structures, and it has central processors.
I'll tell you the phrase. The phrase that's constantly used in the neuroscience community is called pattern completion.
Pattern completion?
The two phrases are pattern separation and pattern completion.
I'd love to talk to you about it more. Yeah, thank you.
If I say twinkle, twinkle to you.
Little star, absolutely.
You completed that not from any one spot in your brain, but from the entire network that actually converged on that. Little bits of that information were stored in the connections across the whole network. So that was a pattern completion activity. And then there's the additional problem of how do you separate patterns so that they're stably attractors as separate things. So it's those are key concepts those two are key concepts for information storage and computing, right? And it's really
all right. Okay, John, I'm very interested. I'll give you a reference. I would like you to go to my mind, drop down to the mind /ERR. Not now. Let's stay with this because we're running out of time, but it's for you. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about and your neuroscience work. So it's under mind /ERR, which stands for experience, recording, and reproducing experiences. And I can do it without any computers anywhere in sight. Okay, let's go on to spooky. I'll just give you one thing there. Basically, Paul Davies has been close to John Bell back in the day. Had the privilege of interviewing John Bell on BBC Radio 3. And it was a book. I've got his book here called The Ghost in the Atom. And this one is all about John Bell, his meeting with John Bell. It's so amazing. John Bell is one of the great people in the universe, most wonderful person, and so original thinker. And John Bell proposed what we now know as experiments to test entanglement of particles that are separated. So the quantum demons here are these weird entangled particles. And I don't think we have time to go into this, but it is a subject I've spent a lot of time on. My John Bell page is one of the longest pages on my website. It must be about 20 or 30 pages text. And I have an explanation of entanglement, which is my own thinking, and look forward to you being interested in that sometime, should you be. But do you, one more thing, his Davies' next book will be called Quantum 2.0, and I think he's going to go deeply into this chapter, what he starts to develop here in his new book, but I don't think he's going to explain spooky action at a distance. Whereas I try hard to explain it in terms of physics, quantum physics, in that link called explanation right there. Anyone for quantum discussions? I think probably it's a little bit off our interest at the moment with Evo-Devo.
Yeah, I personally didn't have anything in that seemed a question or something I wanted to share on that. Does anyone else have any, or are we moving on? I think it was pretty classic, just surveying of stuff we know, I think. That's how it felt.
All right, so chapter 6 is really about how, when, where, how life began. And I have a page on the origin of life, which I refer to you. I don't want to try to talk to you about it right now, but I've worked very hard on this. And the next one is The Ghost in the Machine. And this is a wonderful theme. You notice the book I just showed you, Davies likes the idea of ghosts. He's got the ghost in the atom, and he's got the ghost in the machine, and it's a topic of interest to other members of the Evo-Devo group. The wonderful compilation volume you guys put together called Evolution on Purpose has a chapter called Ghost in the Machine. I was hoping, I've forgotten who did that one. And I've got it right here, Teleonomy and Living Systems. That's the subtitle of Peter Corning's article. And it's a large part of Peter's work. But again, maybe we should just jump over that one and go right into the epilogue, because I'd like to go into my own discussion of what is in epilogue chapter, which is where does meaning come from in the universe?
Yeah, I thought the epilogue was a must read. It was such a nice survey of what he thought things needed to go towards. You know, that was where he was pitching for the information science, Jim.
Yes.
But in the Almost a Miracle chapter,
yeah,
he had that box that mentioned Smith and Morowitz, and the life being essentially a geological or planetary phenomenon, right? And this gets to Robert Hazen's stuff about mineral evolution and the geobiosphere, right? That to me is such a powerful concept. I wish he'd given more than one page on it.
It's sort of like the ultimate. It's sort of the ultimate in niche construction. Our planet is our own little niche construction.
And when it gets directly to Julian's, one of the points Julian makes up is the same point that Carl Sagan made in that chapter, right? There's something really interesting. Sagan gave 3 reasons why he thought life was everywhere. And one of them was man, it looks like it emerged as soon as the planet was cool
yes.
enough. And
yes.
so, and that's the geobiosphere thing, right? That to me feels like somebody's got to be really taking that forward. Eric Smith at Santa Fe Institute was the leading guy. I don't know if he's still publishing. Do you know? Does anyone know?
Don't know.
Yeah, because he has that one really big technical book, which I should actually put it on our book list. So I'll put it on there now. I just wanted to mention that because I think that really feels like something we have to talk about in the origin of life stuff.
I've also got a lot more at the end of my talk on our relationship to life on our planet and the exoplanets, which we're discovering all the time with our beautiful new telescope up there with James Webb and I'm very interested in all of that, but I suggest we jump on, and
Epilogue?
maybe I'll just like to read maybe what Davies says here, because it's the core problem for those of us who are looking for more purpose in the universe. And there are quite a few Evo-Devo members who are really hoping for a purpose from before life somewhere. So I want to just say what Davies says. There's no evidence whatever that the known laws of physics are rigged in favor of life. They are life blind. But what about new state-dependent information laws of the sort I am conjecturing here?
Yep.
It sounds to me, if it's just informational laws, it's more laws of physics and it's more mathematical and so forth. I don't see it as an origin of meaning. But anyway, it's an uplifting thought, and I agree with him, that the laws of the universe might be intrinsically biofriendly in some general manner.
Yeah.
These speculations are very far from a miracle-working deity who conjures life into being from the dust, he says. But in the emergence of life, and perhaps mine, are etched into the underlying lawfulness of nature, it would bestow upon our existence as living, thinking beings a type of cosmic level meaning. It would be a universe in which we can truly feel at home, like Stuart Kaufman's great book and so forth. Anyway,
that phrase "state dependent" it does all the heavy lifting in that quote, Bob, because what he's arguing is that information does not exist outside of a physical context.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
So when you have a specific physical context that has been evolved, then you have all these new information semiotics that can emerge in that context, right? That was his key concept in, like, how do you get beyond Shannon? That was the two key concepts, right? One was learning, and the other was state dependency of informational laws that emerge as things get more and more complex.
I would like to get more deeply into that, but I hope, I guess I see I'm not going to be able to get my business done for the next part of this thing. Maybe you all would like to read this sometime. It's not really long. It only takes about 25-30 minutes for me to read the whole thing, but there's a lot of work I've tried to do here. So
could you give us an overview so we can give you feedback and Q&A on it?
I'm sorry, I'd like to just go on and try to read to you more of what's the issue between Davies and me, and David Laser and so forth, okay? So I'll just saying in my page, I'm moving it up, we will come back, okay, and finish up with the source of meaning in the universe. But first I want to explore how Davies understands the emergence of information itself, order out of chaos, right? And how agency and purpose then emerge with life. And I'd like to tie that down. So I start by pointing out that Davies' first book that I read of his was called The Physics of Time Asymmetry. And he's written another couple of books on that and is fascinated with time. He has time in the title of several of his books and his work. So he explored The Arrow of Time in The Physics of Time Asymmetry. It's a classic book, and I've got about 50 books on the subject of time. Do we understand it? What is it? Do we understand space? And so forth. But now David Laser, Professor David Laser, my mentor in physics and astrophysics, published an article called The Arrow of Time in Scientific American in 1975, within a few months of Davies' Physics of Time Asymmetry. Laser's article showed that if the equilibration rate of the matter in the universe, the speed with which particles randomly distribute themselves among all the possible states in phase space and product of momentum position space, if that equilibrium rate of the matter as the universe expands was going more slowly than the rate of cosmic expansion, then the universe would create space, new space, and that new space would produce many more places where particles could choose to go and do things. And so, going back to my words here, if the matter re-equilibrating was slower than the expansion, then new space would appear, and negative entropy would be defined as the difference between the maximum possible entropy and the much lower and slower actual entropy increase. I'll give you a diagram in a moment. But here's one key thing about my Professor Laser. I found years later where he found this idea in a book in his library. And I didn't read it until much later. And it's by Arthur Stanley Eddington, not his Great Nature of the Physical World book, but a 1935 book called New Pathways in Science. And there Eddington wrote this: the expansion of the universe creates new possibilities of distribution faster than the atoms can work through the possibilities. You
That's
like
so
that?
bitchin'.
This is so beautiful,
great.
so beautiful, actually. Okay, so in the 1977 second edition of Physics of Time Asymmetry, I found that Davies cites Laser's 1975 article, and that's the last time he has a word to say about my mentor, David Laser, okay? So in 1990, David Laser published his book called Cosmogenesis, The Growth of Order in the Universe. And here lies my past 60 years of work on this subject, because David Laser is dead. I'm carrying on his work. I'm publishing his book. I'll tell you another quickly right here. A couple of years ago, he died. His wife, Jean, called me and said, Bob, listen, David's book on free will manuscript is still sitting here on his desk. He said he wouldn't read your book on free will until he finished his. He never finished his. Bob, can you help me with this? So I had the extraordinary privilege of editing and publishing David Laser's manuscript called Why We Are Free, myself, whereas he never did do it. And Free Will is my first book, and he never read it. I did that back in 2011. Anyway, when Laser published Cosmogenesis, he chose a word from Teilhard de Chardin. And there's sort of no accident, I think. It's kind of deep. I knew he spoke about Teilhard quite a bit. You know the story about Teilhard and the noosphere and the... Anyway, I know Laser admired Teilhard. David was the advisor for my wife Holly's PhD thesis, and Holly and I read and commented on every draft of that book I'll call Cosmogenesis. So we're very close to this, close to him, arguing with whether he's going to do it. It turns out that the diagram he put in the book is totally muddy. I'm going to show you the diagram in the book where he showed, here we go, that the reaction rate of the particles is going slower than the expansion rate. And that would mean that the new creation of space was happening faster than it could get filled up with interesting things happening. Yep. Mind you, at the beginning of the universe, nothing interesting was happening, but it could come about because of Laser's work based on Eddington. So now, based on these simple curves right there, and David's verbal description in Scientific American and Cosmogenesis, I produced this diagram, which I've had on the web for 25 years. And I basically show the whole picture of the origin of the universe being way down here and basically very little entropy compared to the entropy we have today, which is this actual entropy curve. So the universe begins with very low entropy, something people call the past hypothesis, that the universe at the beginning must have had very low entropy and therefore lots of information. And the information has been eroded over time by the second law until the information we have today, which is much lower. That picture is totally wrong. And that picture will be presented by that Veritasium video that was referred to on Evo-Devo list a few weeks ago. So a few years after Cosmogenesis, Davies and two colleagues edited the 1994 volume Physical Origins of Time Asymmetry. Same subject, much bigger. Now it's an edited volume. Davies has just one article in it. But in that article, without mentioning Laser's Arrow of Time article or his book on growth of order, Davies coined the term the entropy gap. You see what the entropy gap is? It's this difference between the actual entropy and the maximum possible entropy. Mm-hmm. And he drew a diagram. And here's his explanation. I won't read it to you, but he says an entropy gap opened up. Now I want you to look at David's work right now, entropy and information and how they change with time. And here's the diagram that Paul Davies presents in his book. 5 years after David Laser did the other diagram, but David didn't do that diagram. That's my diagram based on his writing and his thinking and his and here is Paul Davies seeing the same way to present the maximum entropy here, S max, and the actual entropy and a gap between them. And it's just delightful, because that's why I wanted to go meet Paul Davies at Georgiev's seminar in Siena. Unfortunately, Davies didn't show up. Neither did Eric Chason, my Harvard colleague. So once again, Davies doesn't mention Laser's work, but he develops a diagram much like mine, clearly mostly agreeing with what Laser was saying, okay? But Davies then suggests, and you have to read this one little section in here, I guess. It's important to realize, says Davies, that the crucial effect of the expansion in the early universe was very sudden, going fast, and later it's slowing down. Today it seems likely, and he says, though I haven't checked, how could he check, that the gap is narrowing. The universe produces copious quantities of entropy at a rate which I imagine is faster than the now rather feeble expansion raises the maximum possible entropy. And the actual entropy will presumably asymptote toward the maximum possible, producing a heat death. It's amazing that Davies is buying into the idea that we're heading toward a heat death. Now, Laser didn't know, I don't know, and Davies doesn't know, but it's very strange that he comes up with this totally different ending to the universe from the one that David Laser and I think. So, okay, and I just point out, you know all this. I've given 3 more talks to you and Sienna on this whole subject of the heat death, and you see how somehow Davies is buying into that heat death. And now we're doing better with time. I wanted to show you this, though. You know, did any of you look at the Veritasium link on entropy and see their animation? I'm going to do it right here then. I'm going to
Yeah, I was the one that sent that out, I think.
Jim, you were the one who sent that out, so you have seen it. And you know what there's wrong in that presentation? Derek Muller is terrific, but he doesn't get it right. So let me play that for you. I'm going to click and open that in a new tab and then go to this, and I hope you'll see it and hear it, I hope. And we have an ad probably, so yeah,
You got to buy premium, Bob.
Oh yeah, I should. Here we go. Where did the sun get its low entropy?
Would you like Derek's email so you can correct him on his mistake? I'm sure he'd love to know and know about you too.
I've lost the video. I'm just seeing click to exit full screen.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to stop that now and see if I can
Maybe you
get
can
back.
just tell us. Maybe you can just tell us so we have 10 minutes left for conversation.
Yeah, we're really running down. So let
Give you
me
his
go.
email. It's veritasium@gmail.com. If you want to just contact Derek and tell him what he needs to fix, and send him your site. He'll probably he'd love to know about it.
I've talked to her briefly a while ago. He's terrific. So, but anyway, let me come back to what I'm saying, the path hypothesis. And so you see that Laser and Davies both agree the entropy at the origin was much lower than entropy, but it was also maximum. It was also the maximum possible that the universe could do when it was so dense and there was so little space, and Jim, maybe the space they had was infinite, but the entropy was maximum everywhere throughout an infinite universe, if that was the case. So anyway, I drew a diagram which I presented, I think, recently, to how the Schrodinger taught us, as Domino was saying, Schrodinger taught us that life feeds on negative entropy. But Schrodinger didn't know how a star could form itself and become a source of negative entropy. Of course, it depends on the universe opening up and a possible collection of matter coming together and forming the stars and so forth. So there's another picture of that on the Veritasium website. I'll go by that. I must say, I'm sorry you only got 10 more minutes because I've got a lot. As you can see, I'd like to talk to you about many more things. Let me just jump over them. I'll quote this line. There's no purpose in the abiotic universe, but there is value. I mentioned that earlier. Living things, you and I are active, dynamic, growing information structures. We are forms through which matter and energy are continuously flowing, and that was the vision that Davies had also. And it's the top-down communication of meaningful biological information that controls the flows in our bodies, whether we're bacteria or human beings. And so communication capability that we have emerges with the appearance of life, because nothing in the physical universe is talking to one another, getting things done, being synergistic, as Peter Corning writes. The objective value in the universe existed before life. It was the vast creation of negative entropy and free energy, including the galaxies, the planets, the stars, and so forth. So I would have like to talk about this more, but I'll just jump over it, or you can read it. I want to point out that Giulio Prisco, one of our members, was a researcher with the European Space Agency. And I contacted him recently because I advised NASA on what's called the Long Range Program in Space Astronomy. I'll just hold it up for you for a moment. This is my very first publication. And in that publication, NASA laid out the next 50 years of space flight with telescopes in space. I got to edit and publish that thing when I'm in my late 20s and meet with the top scientists all over the country on telescopes in space. There's a big story there. But anyway, talking to Giulio, he had a wonderful idea that we really need to get working on the issue of getting off the planet Earth and making sure humanity survives in space. So maybe you'll read that because it's in this section. And now with just 9 minutes left, I'll just go to my Davies views on God, on purpose and meaning. So in God and the New Physics, he basically said 20th century physics and quantum mechanics is pointing the way to a new appreciation of man and his place in the universe. Well, I'm not so sure. I'm a physicist. I'm a quantum physicist. I think it's a much more interesting story than just the physics. In particular, Davies explored the theologian's view that life is the supreme miracle and human life represents the crowning achievement of God's cosmic masterpiece. Now that I quoted on Paul Davies' page. And then I sent him a note saying, would you criticize and comment on my page? And Julian's laughing. He said, listen, that theologian's view works only if you go on to say that I wholeheartedly reject that. I explore it, sure, and I find it wanting. I hate the God of the gaps. So please set the record straight on that one. He just says that personally. So I put that on his page. So I've corrected him on that. And nevertheless, though, boy, does he use the idea of God. It's in almost every one of his books. And of course, he got the Templeton $1 Million Prize for his work and commenting about the possibility that science will get us to God. Now, none of them are here today, but some members of our Evo-Devo community for whom I've created web pages, including Brendan Graham Dempsey, just last talk, Bob Ulanovich, and Clement, believe that life would be meaningless without a divine purpose. And so other members in our group seek a cosmic purpose before the origin of life. And here I would put you, Julian, and the whole idea of Lee Smolin and the idea that quantum universal determinism has been controlling the cosmic evolution throughout our prebiotic universe and even in a previous universe that we came out of another black hole and so forth. So there are all these issues that I know you're all interested in. I would love to kind of talk with any of you, maybe one-on-one about, how we can fit it all together.
Wait a minute, you brought up, you just opened a can of whoopee there, man. Why don't we all talk a little bit about that question of, let's say, cosmic purpose? I'd love to hear it'd be nice for everyone to share their views because this is a book group, right?
Okay, so let me just say the one I say. I call it meaning in the biosphere. There has been no meaning in the universe as that we know of except in the biosphere. And I believe we should have a reverence attitude toward life, toward the living things that work their way up the line from bacteria all the way through so many steps. And we have residues of all of the learning that life has done, and it's all packed into our own DNA, with 99% of our DNA carrying the construction of living things. And I have a friend who has a Reverence for Life website, and I go back to Albert Schweitzer and his idea that we should never kill anything, we shouldn't eat any living thing, not even a plant. No. Okay. Anyway, I have a whole thing. I'd love if you read Meaning in the Biosphere, but you get where I'm going, and let's listen to your comments. Thanks.
I'm going to interject because I have to leave in a couple minutes at 1:30, but I'm 100% with you on that, Bob.
Thank you, John.
You know, the way I view the universe itself is alive, and it's just been developing to this state, and we are a manifestation of the universe having developed consciousness of itself, and reverence for life is kind of built into that world.
It does. I see.
There's nothing external that we need to look to. It's in.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Oh, nicely said. I'm 100% on with 1,000% on that with you too. That like looking at this incredibly complex thing, that's where all the lessons come from, because we, as Bob was saying, so much of that history is embedded in us, right? So much of it's already there. What do you, Domino and Julian, what do you guys think?
Well, who wants to go first? I've got a lot of thoughts on this, but I totally agree with you that the meaning's in the biosphere. And how did the meaning get to be in the biosphere? How did the biosphere get to be the biosphere? How do you end up with a situation where 99% of our genes are spread throughout the entire biosphere, only 1% are uniquely ours? It looks like one thing, one system. Yep. You know, a biosphere is an organ with subsystems that are integrated and that self-complexifies and self-orders up to intelligent, complex life, and using technology to communicate. And I think the only way you can explain how a biosphere can just pop out, like, as you were saying earlier in this conversation, life appears on Earth about as early as it possibly can. As we were also saying in this conversation, the complexification of the geosphere flows seamlessly into the complexification of the biosphere. And as we were all, the only explanation for this that I think makes any sense is that the universe itself, a system that self-complexifies and self-assembles, is the result of an evolutionary process of universes. This can't just be a one-shot universe. And this goes back to monad. You talked about monad earlier. Monad thinks, oh, we just won the cosmic lottery. Life is this insanely unlikely thing that happened. He's completely wrong. Life is life looks inevitable. And to talk about there was a bit earlier, Paul Davies says earlier in the book. I love everything he's saying, but he's missing one big thing. He says earlier in the book that the laws of physics, have no meaning. They are arbitrary, they're random, and meaning only arises with the informational states of specific physical systems that happen to construct themselves.
Right.
And that doesn't make any sense. The laws of physics are what generate all of the processes that lead to the informational states that then give you the meaning that you can recognize as meaning. But the physical structures are assembled in stars, element by element, built out. The whole periodic table gets built out and distributed in a sort of 3-step process through about 3 or 4 rounds of star formation, and distributed out from the bottom of gravity wells. And the whole thing is one massively rich, complex developmental process that has to have had an evolutionary history to explain why it's such a developmental process. And
so why did he not even mention fine tuning when he wrote an entire book on it, the Goldilocks Enigma, why did he not even make that connection between the physical laws and the informational laws? I have no idea.
I don't know. I think
Good
it's
question.
because everybody is terrified of saying if there's a mechanism outside the lifetime of this single universe that explains why it has a complex developmental trajectory, I will get blamed. I will be accused of saying God did it, and I will be made a pariah. But it's evolution did it. And I think it's, again, a classic example of he can see the fine-tuning. He knows there's fine-tuning. It doesn't occur to him that evolution could have done the fine-tuning. So he thinks it's fine-tuned, but God seems to be the only explanation that's available for that. So I can't mention the fine-tuning because that's mentioning God. And I think that's just happens again and again and again and again.
He's afraid of that.
Pardon?
Right?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I
I
think Paul
have to
Davies
go
is
back
afraid
to
of
that
mentioning
book
God.
and see what he said about God in that book. But I think, yeah, I just think he's just not making that connection that you're making so well, I would argue. It's like we just got to help him see it, man. What, Domino, can you give us your thoughts? We're getting to the end of the hour. Meaning,
Well,
cosmic
I
meaning.
feel like I'm kind of the heretic in the group, I guess, because I'm an existentialist. I've always thought the universe is absurd, and I don't see any meaning. I don't see any evidence for that.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Hey, Dommy, I'm kind of with you on that. I'm schizophrenic because what I said earlier, I believe is true, but I'm also an existentialist, and I also think contingency, as I've argued in our thing, and chance are fundamental to evolution, and I don't think there's any way around that. It's
No
not
way.
a completely deterministic universe.
Yeah.
I will
Oh, sure,
just
it's
say
not
that my
deterministic at all. It's not,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
Jim,
developmental
to your point, that 95-5 rule that I write about in looking at biological systems, I would argue 95% of it has to be contingent. But then the question is there a critical 5% that's continually structuring? That's my question. So yeah.
Let me just
I
say
would also
to
say-
Domino that my first course in philosophy at Brown was existentialism with Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus and so forth. So I've always been very interested in their work. They think world is absurd, and they say we are free, we have freedom, but we have no values because everything is absurd. The British, on the other hand, are quite the opposite. They say we have a utilitarian value system, but we're determined, so we don't have any freedom. So between Britain and France back in the day when I was studying them, neither one of them got two together and found we could also have a purpose, and we could also, anyway, thanks for that comment on existentialism.
And thank you
Thank
for
you
an
all.
incredible event. Thank you for an incredible presentation and leading us through all of this. It was awesome. Julian, do you jump in?
Can I say one thing? I think you can save your existentialism, James, Domino. You can save your existentialism with cosmological natural selection, because a giraffe is absurd. A rhinoceros is absurd. Any evolved organism, though it has meaning and order, is nonetheless simultaneously absurd.
Well
An
said.
evolved universe that
Well said.
generates us, it's pretty absurd. But there is an explanation and there is a meaning.
Yeah, there's that book,
Okay.
Biological Exuberance, makes that whole point of just how freaking crazy the niches are that the extremophiles go to, and it's just it's just aesthetically beautiful, but absurd. All right, well, so you guys, what do you think of Arrival of the Fittest by Wagner? Is that okay for our next one?
Absolutely, with me. Like it.
It's in your wheelhouse, Jim. So, I'm sure you'll have a lot of good insights for us there, and it's something we all really want to understand. It's about robustness and innovation and how it emerges.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So very much James Shapiro, Dennis Noble-ish, right? Really cool, interesting stuff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
I hope
Bob.
you guys
Thank you,
enjoyed
Bob,
it.
for-
I hope the viewers enjoy it. We'll get it on our channel soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
to
I know you
see
did a
you.
huge amount of work and you didn't get to deliver everything because we're a bunch of savages here, but we really appreciate the time and effort you put into it, and we really enjoyed the conversation. Thank
We
you.
really do, Bob.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you.
All right, love you
Thank
guys. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, good. We're
That
done.
was great. That was great.
That was fun, huh?
That was fun. Thanks, John.
Yeah, it was good. It's like you say, wrangling Bob. That was a fun one.
That was great. He was, because there's always that tension. But he handles it well.
Yeah. I learned a lot from you. I'm really trying to pick up some of your biting your style here, brother.
Because I was going to interject at every chapter, but I thought I can't. Just let Bob flow. It's fine.
Exactly.
That was great. That was
Good.
great.
Are you aware of this guy, Nigel Goldenfeld?
I do not know Nigel Goldenfeld.
All right.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
In the epilogue, he has this fantastic fucking sentence. I'm just going to read it to you.
Sure.
Laws that change. It's about state-dependent laws in information. State-dependent informational laws, right?
Right.
So he says, laws that change as a function of state are a generalization of the concept of self-reference. What a system does depends on what the system is, its current complex context. Recall from chapter 3 the notion of self-reference mentioned in the work of Turing and von Neumann lies at the core of both universal computation and replication.
Okay.
Relaxing the stringent requirement that laws have to be fixed at the beginning of the universe, right? Relaxing that.
Okay.
And taking into account, or for all time, excuse me. Sure, they can be fixed at the beginning of the universe, but for all time. And taking into account self-reference demands a whole new branch of science and mathematics, still largely unexplored.
Huh.
The physicist Nigel Goldenfeld of the University of Illinois, and he's now at UCSD, by the way,
okay,
is one of a handful of theorists who recognizes the promise of this approach. Self-reference should be an integral part of a proper understanding of evolution, but it is rarely considered explicitly, he writes.
Huh.
So I went to his page
Uh-huh.
at UCSD. You know, he doesn't have any book. He's got crap load of articles and chapters
Uh-huh.
and papers that he's written. He wrote a book review of Introduction to Systems Biology and a book review of Sync, Stephen Strogat's book on spontaneous order. Book review of Fractals and Scaling in Finance by Mandelbrot. He wrote that book review in '98. Ooh, a long time ago.
Yeah,
anyway, this guy's been around. He's been writing for 25 years.
Right.
I'm going to be down there.
I'm a little tired. I didn't fully follow everything you were saying about him earlier. It was a very long sequence of logic and I lost it a little bit. So can you send me that paragraph or that page?
Yeah, it's this page. It's page 212 and 213. It spans it. It's basically arguing from, you know, the idea of self-reference in a replicator.
Yeah. Okay.
That you build up these new state-dependent laws.
Okay.
So he opens the epilogue talking about the idea of God leading to who's supposed to be fixed, immutable, and perfect, leading to this. This is actually useful for you for your book.
Okay.
He opens up the idea that fixed, immutable laws being the primary driver of reality comes directly from theological regions 3 centuries ago with respect to the nature of God.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
yeah, the physical laws took over from God as the eternal, perfect, unching thing.
Exactly. And then we've been chipping away at that, like the way we chipped away at absolute space time, right?
Yeah.
We've been chipping away at these absolutist laws.
Yeah.
The smarter we get.
Yeah.
And so now I'd say the leading edge of that is something like, cosmological learning, right?
Yeah.
This idea that learning systems, iterative learning systems, are going to continually tweak their laws. And like in the biological system, you and I can't tweak our genes that much, but we can tweak the networks that are higher on top of that regulate those genes.
Yeah.
And then occasionally we tweak the way down in the system, right? But so there is this inertia to the older laws, but they're still, so they're not immutable. They're just a little bit more, they have a little bit more inertia, so they're harder to change, right?
Okay.
So anyway, I just love that whole idea. And I think Goldenfeld.
We're using laws for two slightly different things there, I think. But yeah,
Are we?
sure.
Okay.
That's, I think what you're talking about is slightly different to the laws of physics or the
No, that's right. No, I'm arguing that the laws of information emerge on top of the laws of physics, and both are selected upon.
Sure. Yeah, I would say one is selected upon outside the lifetime of this universe. One is selected upon inside.
Exactly.
No?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Sure.
I think you've nailed it. Exactly it.
It's nested.
But you cannot truly, as you pointed out earlier, you cannot truly understand the origin or meaning of the laws at the beginning of the universe without putting them into that replicative self-referential framework.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I guess like that thing that Davies was saying, I was like, holy fuck, how can you think this? That the laws of physics don't mean anything and aren't going anywhere, they're just arbitrary.
I swear when I saw that, I wrote the word cope next to it.
Cope, yeah.
He's just trying to
he's protecting himself from accusations of theology.
It shouldn't be cope. There's a better word for it. He's just completely trying to cover his ass.
This keeps happening. It's the terror of anything that involves a meaning and a directionality to the laws of physics is so associated with Christianity and religion and God.
So give me the single word. Yep.
Can't think straight about it. And
give me the single word you can use in your book and in your discussion of this for what that is, what he did. It's covering his ass.
Yeah.
But it's a specific kind of it.
Oh my
say
God,
that, look, I'm still in your tribe, right? He's trying to say I'm still in your tribe.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Atheistic signaling. I don't know. It's
it's signaling, exactly.
Signaling. Yeah, it's
not virtue signaling. It's
signaling that you still believe that everything is meaningless.
Tradition signaling. Yeah.
But I'll think of something on it. Yeah, it's good. We need a meme. We need a T-shirt for that.
Yeah. It's
like what I keep saying is that scientists are constantly refusing to engage with evidence of evolution because they think it's evidence of God, and this just keeps fucking happening.
Yeah.
And they're rejecting evidence of evolution because they think they're rejecting evidence of God. And it means they can't think straight, and they're completely intellectually dishonest about it. They know there's fine tuning, and they don't have an explanation for the fine tuning, so they pretend there isn't fine tuning, and they say bullshit like Davies said there, which is like, oh, the laws of physics are random and arbitrary and meaningless and going nowhere, and have no meaning. But of course, they have fucking meaning. Look what they do. Look what their fucking consequences are. Clearly, that doesn't happen by mistake.
Yeah, totally, brother.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good to chat with you.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you something. This is amusing. Hang on, I'll just stick it in the chat. It's a tweet. Do you know? You probably don't know him. Tiago Forte. He came out with a book called "Building a Second Brain."
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah. He just discovered blowtorch theory. Have a look at his tweet. I just sent it to you. Do you see it?
Let me check. Oh, nice.
It's sweet, right?
One of the most astonishing pieces I've read in recent memory.
Yeah. Nice. He gives me too much credit. He doesn't like mention Smolin or anything, but yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
Also written with incredible wit, personality, originality, and poking good fun without devolving into pandering or crudeness. That would be rare in any piece, much more so in a science one.
Isn't that nice?
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's nice.
you really have a great way with words, man.
But that's exactly the kind of thing I'm hoping to do, is like give people this kind of conversion experience. But like he's had that conversion experience there. He's like read it and gone, holy shit, I see the universe in a completely different way now. This makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give people a secular scientific conversion experience. And
Exactly.
I loved reading that because it was like, oh my God, it worked. It landed. The language I wrote it in got it through his defenses. I actually got the ideas across, and they blew his fucking mind. It was great.
Amen, brother.
But it's slowly happening.
Do you think we want to get him? He's a really nice guy. You know, he wrote a really wonderful review of how to use Notebook LM, which I read early on. When
Yeah. No, he's a good guy. He's trying to help us all think. I mean, he'd be a good guy to just talk to anyway. I'm reaching out to him because because that was great.
Yeah, of course. What would we? Is there something that he's written we'd like to have him? You said it's How to Build a Brain, right?
How to Build a Second Brain was one thing he wrote.
Second brain.
He thinks a lot about how. I mean, one of the things that kind of broke his heart was AI came along and it was suddenly doing a lot of things that he had spent a lot of time laboriously building systems to do, of tagging all your information and being able to retrieve it and all that, in a way that an LLM can quite do. But I think he's got over his depression over that, and he's now finding ways to work with AI and to use it to think better. So, because some of the guys in the group are very interested in how to use AI for conversation and research and interrogating themselves. He may have some insights into that might be useful as a talk to the group about how scientists can use the new technologies as a second brain to help them think. I'm not sure.
Could you pitch him on that? Could you pitch him on? Look, we love your work. We both watched your wonderful How to Use Notebook LM video. Yeah. Would you be willing to talk about using tools, including your book? Using tools in research in the modern world, what you recommend.
Yeah, and I can explain to him, like, so this community, some of them are using LLMs and really excited by it. A lot of them are older guys who don't know what the fuck to do with this, and they're using it but not necessarily understanding it. And there's a wide range of people here, but there are a lot of the smart scientists, and it'd be great if they could get more out of the tools, because not all of them know where to begin with them, which I think is the truth, right?
Absolutely. It would be fantastic to have a 1 hour talk by him. We could call it a workshop.
Yeah, a workshop. Yeah.
Ask if he wants to do a 1 hour workshop, a scholars talk.
Now it's kind of his job, and he normally charges money, I think, for stuff. So I'm just wondering, would we offer a sort of token fee or something, or should we just do it as a friendly thing? I'm not entirely sure what's the best way to. I can approach him to say, would you like to do it for fun? And I'll say, I understand if it's your business, you normally charge this, it's fine, whatever. But just
that's totally the way I would do it, and to say, look, we normally record these for our YouTube channel, but we'd be happy to do it private if you just want to keep it totally informal and relaxed.
We're very flexible on it. Whatever,
whatever you want, exactly.
I'll get talking to him because I want to talk to him about my stuff anyway, and then I'll bring that subject up. Yeah, I won't ask him for something free straight away. I want to talk to the guy. But that's an interesting thing that we can do once we're in contact. Yeah. How about that?
And you might want to just put this tab up so you can look at it at some point.
Oh yeah.
This is Nigel Goldenfeld's. This is his publications page.
What was that thing you were reading to me? Where can I read that specific thing because it didn't stick in my head well enough for me to fully follow it?
It's the most. I would say it was the most important signaling he did in the epilogue.
Epilogue of what though? What are we talking about here?
He's talking about the where science and mathematics have to go.
What epilogue? What's the publication? Oh, sorry. Paul Davies said this. Oh, sorry. I didn't understand. I thought you were reading from a different. I thought you were reading from.
Yeah, Davies says it in the epilogue.
Oh, Davies says it in the epilogue. Right. Yeah, got you now.
Do you have the book?
I Don't. Isn't that terrible? I just didn't. I can buy it. I can buy it on Kindle. And
Nah, you can get it on Anna's archive. But
Okay.
just to repeat what it was, it's all about how when you include self-reference,
Yeah.
what a system does depends on the state that a system is in. Then, which, you know, Turing and von Neumann both talk about.
Yeah.
Then you have to come up with a whole new branch of science and mathematics around the laws of self-reference.
Okay.
And physicist Nigel Goldenfeld is one of a handful of theorists who recognizes the promise of this approach.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, he's part of edge.org. So
Oh, yeah.
he's written stuff there. He looks like an interesting guy. He's a member of the APS.
Uh-huh.
And seems like a cool guy.
Good.
And he's now at UCSD, where I went to school. So I'm going to see if I can talk to him before or when I'm down there.
There we go. There he is. I see him now. Yeah. Okay, great. I will find out more. Oh, he's born in London, St. Pancras, London.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. Hey, University of Cambridge and then University of California, San Diego. So, yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay. I'll find out more. This is all good. Exciting times. I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to finishing my big piece on spiral galaxy formation, which I am very excited about.
Whoa, awesome.
I think it like it's a whole new fucking model for spiral galaxy formation that I think is probably fucking true. It's driven by jets. I'm really, really, really excited by it. Like the maths adds up, the timings add up. It matches the little red dot spectra. That, you know, it's really, really sweet. I just want to get it out before someone else fucking comes up with it. But yeah, it's come together. I might run a draft past you like before it's completely finished so that you can give me some feedback. But basically,
yeah, I'd love to see it. Cool.
Yeah, very excited.
Good job. Yeah, fantastic, brother. We're going to meet again at 3 tomorrow at 3. Is that right?
Oh my God. I guess. Is it 3? What's happening tomorrow at 3?
Well, that's
3 more time. Yeah. Okay.
That's our regular.
Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right.
I might not be able to stay for the whole thing, but
me either. I have this. I'm trying to finish this paper. I'm falling behind, but yeah. I'm back to it now.
Cool.
All right, bro.
That was great. Thank you, John.
Fantastic, brother.
You're doing great work.
Okay.
You're doing great work.
Take care.
Good luck with everything. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Best of the family.